I have so
Welcome to,
a nice
oh,
coffee.
I'm glad you have such a nice coffee. Welcome to the Map It Forward podcast, everybody. Today, joining me on the podcast is Salome Puentes from Caravela in Bogata, Colombia. Hi, Salome, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How
It,
are you?
I'm fantastic. It's so lovely to have you joining us today. It Before we do get started today, I do want to offer our condolences to the Barayona family. Gilberto Barayona passed on Friday from COVID-19. And from myself and my team and the whole coffee community, I wanted to offer our condolences to his family and his friends and to everyone that he just touched everybody's hearts. And so I don't want to let this moment pass without us acknowledging that an absolute titan of the industry has passed, and we just want to offer our condolences. We'll be rebooting the conversation that I had with Gilberto earlier this year. We'll be putting that out today as a tribute to Gilberto. And I just want everyone out there to stay safe and stay healthy. And we're here, Salome, to talk about how COVID is impacting producers globally.
Yes.
And you are perfectly positioned in Caravela to talk about that, because while you're based in Colombia, you are able to talk about, because you look after the relationships worldwide for Caravela, right?
Yes, it's a team, so we all look after the relationships that roasters establish with producers.
Mm-hmm.
To see it as a partnership and a collaboration year after
Mm-hmm.
year. So we are a small team, but we are spread around. Yeah.
So what do you do? Just so that we can start the conversation and get a clear understanding of exactly what your job is. What do you do?
So we created the relationship building department as a tool to help establish and strengthen the relationships between the roasters and the coffee
Mm-hmm.
producers. Because this is a structure where a producer needs support to find good matches to sell his coffee, and a roasters need support to find producers that are willing to go that extra mile. But you certainly need someone in between, because it's two very, very different worlds, two very
Oh,
different
yeah.
mindsets. So you need someone in between to neutralize and balance the relationship so it can actually be fruitful. Yeah, so that's most of what I do and the relationship building team does. We also create projects at origin, sustainability projects, purchasing projects, anything that we know will support producers and will help open up opportunities on the roaster side to find the coffee that they want.
So you specifically within Caravella, the company that you work for, your specific role is to be that bridge between roasters and producers.
Yes.
What's your background? How did you learn the language of both of those sides of things?
It's a very long one.
That's fine. We've got a couple of hours. I got to tell you, this is why we do this long format conversation kind of thing. Because if you just have question after question after question and you do it in half an hour or an hour, you don't really get to know anything about anybody. But in a long format kind of conversation, we get to dig deep and get real. So let's do it. Tell us your story.
So I found coffee after I finished high school.
Where were you
I was going to
based?
take, I was based in Armenia. My family has moved quite a bit. So
Okay.
I was in Quindío region, the coffee triangle and all of that. So it was like, it kind of came to me.
Okay.
Um, so a year before going to university, I stepped into the coffee world. Basically, oh, this is how you brew coffee. This is the paper filter, and you pour water, and that's it. But I fell in love with it. So I started trying to learn and learn more. And at the time, it was quite hard because there wasn't like any institution inside of Colombia that would teach
Yeah.
you. You would have to be like already a coffee producer or a coffee shop to get to those classes.
Okay.
So I ended up studying control on food quality. And I made a lot of friends. Not wearing coffee. So
Okay.
I was like jumping around and, oh, do you need help? I'll help you set the tables. I'll help you this. I'll help you that. And that's how I started
In
learning.
cuppings?
Yes. Cupping and barismo, which was like the most accessible thing to learn.
Okay.
And then I did some SCA when it was SCAE.
Back then.
The separation between SCA, that's now only one.
Uh-huh.
I took some certifications there. I started learning more and more.
Okay.
And met some people and I asked them, where can I learn how to cup, like for real? Because I knew I could like brew, but if I didn't know how to cup, well, there wasn't any way to evaluate myself.
Okay.
And someone recommended me to take like a job or an internship in Caravela. I looked for it, but they didn't have the type of um, internship program or like what I was looking for, because it was more of the importing offices internship for children of coffee producers that wanted to learn, and I was neither again. So I sent an email saying like, I'm really interested. This is what I have been doing, and they opened up an internship. That's how I started with coffee. So I was trained to be a quality analyst, to purchase coffee, to purchase parchment coffee, and then I was trained to interact with customers and to travel with customers at the origin, and then we started like creating the role. Very lucky because at Caravela you can be very creative and there's a space
Nice. You
for
got to
it.
love a company that welcomes that kind of innovation.
Yes.
Just for
Yeah.
can I just stop you there for a second? For anybody that's listening, Caravela is not a sponsor of this podcast. Just so that you know,
Oh, no.
we're not having this conversation because Caravela has sponsored this podcast. I'm not, just to make that clear. Go ahead.
Yes. So I came up with this idea because I didn't want to do sales. I really don't like sales. I love Origin. I'm an Origin person and I will be part of Origin my whole life. It's the most important thing for me. And while I was traveling with customers, I realized that we were lacking a more structured way to create the relationship, to like foster and help. So I talked with my bosses and we came with ideas and we came up with the relationship building thing.
It's definitely a
And we
trend, right?
created,
That needs to
yeah,
happen with importing companies.
definitely. Because it is more of, oh, let's go travel, let's go to Origin, let's do this and let's do that. But you have to have goals. You're investing money, you're meeting people, you're meeting producers. You have to make sure that you're fulfilling your goals as a roaster, but you are open the opportunity to create the relationships with producers.
Right.
And then you get into how do you actually create relationships with producers? Like, what do you have to have into account? And that's how it started. So it's been almost 6 years now.
Well done. Well done.
But we created the department and then we grew and now we have a bit more people that travels and create the projects in different countries and all of that.
Have you found,
yeah, it's very exciting.
Have you found it successful and beneficial to people who are engaging in your services from that perspective? Have they found it really beneficial to have someone like you who kind of works as a, help me find the right term, or excuse me if I use the wrong term, but you're essentially a cultural and job interpreter,
Yes,
right? You
basically.
interpret what producers need in the relationship, and you interpret what roasters need in the relationship. Have you found that to be successful?
Quite a bit, yeah.
How
For
has it been successful for people?
creating relationships, for producers having certainty, knowing the people that's going to buy their coffee, creating this structure where it is not only business, but the relationship. But it's not only the relationship,
It's
but there are
also
ground
business,
rules,
yeah.
there is a way of working. It's been very, very successful among roasters and producers. Yeah, that's why we decided to let the team grow. Because it was just me at the beginning.
Oh, I imagine that would have been very intense and hard, and as it grows, it gets even harder. So when you say that the relationship isn't just business, it's a connection. And when you say it's not just a relationship, it's also business and certainty. What kind of certainty are we looking at? Because as we go into COVID, what we're starting to see is a lot of that certainty that was starting to be built, from what I'm seeing anyway, has started to dissolve, and it dissolved very quickly.
Yes.
And it
Yeah,
dissolved
definitely.
in the way of forward contracts almost halting. Am I right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, exactly.
so for people who don't understand what forward contracts are, perhaps you could talk about that a little bit. And if people want to get an in-depth understanding of what that means, I'm going to put a link in the show notes for a free webinar that we have that is about buying coffee in uncertain times. And that should be really helpful. But anyway, go ahead, please.
So forward contract basically is that you're committing to purchase coffee in advance in the future. So you did your projections as a roaster, you know the profiles, you know the producers or the blends that you like, and you basically go to your provider and you say, in 5 months, in 3 months, or in a year, I will purchase and I will need this coffee and this is the price.
Right.
You negotiate the price, but you sign a contract. What does that make along the industry? First, you as a roaster, if you're doing a fixed price contract, you will have certainty on how much you will pay, how much coffee you will receive, and the quality of the coffee that you are receiving.
Right.
As an exporter, I have the certainty that you will purchase that coffee, so I can open up my purchasing to the producers. I can talk with the producer in advance and let him know. I can do a survey harvest to actually see how much of that I will have from certain producers. If I won't have enough, I will contact other producers to supply that. That means that the producer has certainty that his coffee is going to be bought in the future.
It seems like it
Basically,
provides some
forward
confidence
contracts.
for everyone in the supply chain.
Yes, basically.
But it also sounds like that most of the power is being then held with the roaster if they can easily cancel those contracts.
Well, that's why the contract is there. So the ICO has some rules and stipulation on the contract. So it protects both parts. Because the idea of this contract, like the whole concept, is to give more certainty to the producer.
Right.
So you cannot cancel this contract out of nowhere. You can ask for a delay, but you cannot cancel them right away. It will bring consequences.
And what are some of those consequences?
It can be penalties, not selling coffee. More than anything, it's penalties about the amount of money that was agreed to pay. So if you have good relationships, you will ask and you will talk down the chain, like here right now, we cannot like purchase the coffee. Can we delay it a little bit? And then we will talk with the producers, see what I can do. Maybe another roaster is willing to buy the coffee right away, and the rest of the harvest of the producer we can save for this roaster. But that's the magic of the contract, because it covers both parts, not only one.
So in this time, so COVID hits on the consumer end of the supply chain. We saw businesses devastated globally. Talk to me about how that rippled back from March. How did that ripple back back into the supply chain?
It's been massive. So at Caravela, we based our business model on creating this. The roaster knows the profile of the producers and what we can offer, so they contract the coffees in advance.
Okay.
What had happened is that some roasters asked to delay the shipment.
When you say some roasters,
but some other roasters
sorry
that
to
had
interrupt
other
you there.
avenues.
When you say some roasters, are we talking about the majority of roasters or a small fraction of roasters?
A small fraction.
Okay.
We have been very, very lucky.
Okay,
yeah.
so a small fraction asked if you could delay.
Yes,
okay.
The shipments. But others that were selling in different avenues or bigger, like supermarkets or wholesales, asked to have the coffee. So we have been very, very lucky on that regard, because we have been able to support the producers while moving the coffees. Even though it's been really hard at origin, because we already have COVID here.
Right. So let me make sure I'm understanding this correctly. So COVID hits, smaller businesses get knocked out or halted for some time on the consumer market end. Supermarkets, though, accelerate in their sales. They do more sales. And so from the roasters who had to delay their contracts, you were still able to redirect the coffees that they were asking for a delay on towards roasters who were supplying supermarkets.
Well, kind of. So most of our partners don't do a lot of like supermarkets really cheap coffee, because we don't really do cheap coffee.
Okay.
But it kind of happened like that. We did have to reduce the amount of coffee that we were buying, and we were lucky because the harvest was finishing in Central America and Mexico.
Okay.
And the harvest in Colombia and Ecuador was just about to start. So when we have this shift, the coffee from Southern wasn't ready yet, just the coffee from Central America, and we were already finishing to buy. So it gave us a little bit of room, because it was like 3 weeks that was like complete chaos, because everyone was closing. Every country was closing down. There's no more coffee, no more coffee shops, no more anything. But then it started reopening slowly. So we have been able to shift. We did decrease on our sales. But fortunately, Caravela, as an exporter, has importing offices in different countries and different parts of the world. So we were able to move the coffees to other places where coffee was needed.
And so you didn't notice that big a hit, is that correct?
It was big, but it wasn't huge.
Something you could survive from.
Yes, thankfully.
That's massive. That's great. I mean, because more than anything, something needs to be done with the coffee so that the producers get paid for the work that they've been done. So that's a great thing.
Yeah. And that's part of the big job that's done of teaching why projections or work contracting are so important, because I know of other people that lost easily 60% of their sales.
When you say
Because
other
their
people,
model,
you mean other importing
other,
companies?
yeah, other exporting companies. There's something there. Caravela is an
Exporting
exporter
company. Sorry.
with
Thank you
importing
for
coffee.
helping me with that.
Because it is 100 and around 170 people at origin and 12 people at importing office.
For Caravella?
So yes.
Wow. So
So we are an exporting company. Yeah.
So I appreciate the clarification on that. So you noticed that other exporting companies, other than Caravella, were experiencing a bigger hit than what you ended up experiencing, because would you say it's because primarily because you were able to logistically redirect things, or do you think it's because of other reasons?
It is because of two main reasons. The first one is that we work with forward contracts. We project how much coffee we can buy. We talk with the producers. We do survey harvest before offering the coffee. So we know how much coffee we will have. And we know how much our roaster partners are expecting. And we do contract the coffee. What happens usually is that most exporters, they buy the coffee and then they send over samples to people so they decide what to buy.
Okay.
There's no commitment there. Just, I'll taste the coffee and I'll let you know if I can buy it.
Right.
And if I through this really hard situation, of course I won't be able to buy. And I don't have anything that's guiding me to try and find a way or talk with the guys. What can we do? Can you move the coffee? And the second thing is that we are lucky enough, customers in different countries. So we could reallocate and move the coffee. And another thing that helped is that harvest was a little bit delayed in the south.
Because of the weather?
Yeah.
Okay. And by the south, you mean in Colombia?
Yeah, Ecuador and Peru.
Okay, all of South America.
Yeah.
So you and I started talking very recently. We started talking after we were introduced by Christopher Ferran, after you had heard his presentation with Jamie Isets for our 3-day event, A New Coffee Industry.
Yeah.
And you started telling me some pretty serious stuff that was going on in Colombia.
Yeah.
And we started a conversation that felt like it went for 5 minutes, but it was an hour. And we got interrupted. And I really wanted to continue the conversation and thought, everybody needs to hear this. So come on the podcast and let's do it. Okay. So tell all of us, what's going on in Colombia so far since COVID? Yeah, that big sigh. Yeah, I giggle, but it's not funny at all what's happening right now.
No, it's not funny at all. It's been really, really hard because when we were talking, I remember I was telling you, we are really hoping that COVID doesn't go to these like small towns and municipalities where coffee grows, because it will be very harmful. Well, it's there already.
Really? Since we spoke?
Yes. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. So we now have cases all over Colombia. And what has happened is that the government has tried to do lockdowns, but especially in the municipalities, because the harvest was coming. Everyone was really, really, really worried. And what they started doing, it was like even closing the villages so no one could come up or down.
So help me understand that they locked down villages so that you couldn't get in or out unless you were from that village. Is that correct?
Yes, basically. or you could move certain days. So of course your ID number and the number it ends, you can leave that day and you have to go back. And producers were really, really afraid, because that means that if there's no space to move around,
Mm-hmm.
The moving population of pickers, because Colombia is a country that has harvest basically year round.
Because it
So you have
migrates,
this,
right? You were explaining to me that
yeah,
the migratory workers move as the harvest migrates south. Is that
yes,
correct?
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So they start moving, but if we don't have those pickers, then producers have to see what they can do.
Right.
We have seen a trend that producers that are very committed to specialty, they already have a baseline of pickers. But still, they don't come from the same village. They come from the near town, or they have, if the harvest is too big, they will have to hire some of the pickers that are moving around.
Mm-hmm.
Also depending on the size of the farm. And that was over.
When
No,
you
no
say
moving.
over, what you mean there is that people
The
used to be
moving
able to,
population of pickers, yeah.
yeah, so people
That's
used to
not
be
going to
able
happen.
to access a workforce that would travel around Colombia. And if they
Yes,
needed extra help on their farms, they could just bring in other people to help produce the coffee, harvesting and processing it. What COVID
yes,
has done has stopped the migration of workers in Colombia,
yeah,
and people have had to make do with the labor force that they have already available to them. Now, is that available to them on their farms or in local villages, or what? How does that typically look?
Usually the family first,
Right,
then people from the village, and then pickers from the municipality.
right. So producers have to help each other and lend pickers out to each other. Is that correct?
Yes,
Wow.
they will have to learn pickers. So they will organize it through basically when the coffee is ripe. So we have this beautiful thing that is called aminga, and it's an indigenous word. It comes from Quechua, and it's basically working together for the common good.
Oh, I
That's what it
love
means.
that.
So we need to build a road. Let's do aminga for that. That means that everyone's coming together and helping to build the road. That's also a word that is used in Peru, amazingly,
We have a
surprisingly.
similar thing in Syria. Yeah, it's a lovely concept, isn't it? If there's a
Yeah,
party that needs to happen, if there's a harvest that needs to be done, uh,
yeah.
every, everyone comes together to do it. Yeah, and there's a different word in Arabic. How lovely! What coffee are you drinking, by the way?
I'm drinking coffee from Ecuador.
Nice, nice. You just seemed
Yes,
like you're
a
enjoying it
really nice coffee.
so much.
I am, because this coffee is really close to my heart, because
Oh,
it's a relationship I help build
oh,
and
nice,
strengthen. Yeah,
nice.
and the producer is one of the best, most committed, organized producers
Do you
that
want to give
I've
them a
ever
shout
met.
out?
So, of course. So I'm drinking Típica Mejorado
Okay.
from Ecuador, from Jorge Tapia, which is
Shout
the
out to Jorge.
absolute best.
I
Yes.
hope I get to taste it one day.
Yeah, definitely.
So
Um,
Aminga.
yes. And what happened is producers start getting together and on how they were going to go around. Usually at a farm, you do this thing. They just did it on the village.
Mm-hmm.
So at a farm, your lower altitude lots will ripen first, and you will go around all of the lots till you have to go back to the first one because it's ripe again. They basically try to schedule that for all of the farms of the
That's
village.
amazing.
So this farm will start first, and we will move up. We work a lot with our PECA team, structure and try and find ways to support producers throughout that, because even pickers are moving around the village. So you have to have like face masks, and you have to try and clean their shoes and all of that. So we've been working with that, and some partners have helped a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And we were able to do deliveries of face masks and alcohol or sanitizer and things like producers. Um, but that's basically what they are doing. In Tolima region, what they did was even more surprising, because they got together and they to set up a price for all of the coffee that was going to be picked. So they had a base price per kilogram of cherry for pickers to know how much we're going to get. And then if you're a producer that produces a specialty, the producer will give you extra money because you have to pick differently, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they were so organized as a collective community that has helped a lot of the small producers. This has been more of a challenge for bigger farms or bigger producers, but it's been helpful as well that the harvest southern have been a little bit late than the other ones.
Mm-hmm.
So it is still really hard, but well, it's how it is, and people are really trying to give their best to support each other. Yeah.
Have you noticed an increase in the incidence of COVID so far in these local communities with the not the migratory, but with the local picking community? Are you able to slow down the spread of COVID or prevent the spread of COVID given the measures that you're using with face masks and with sanitizer, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, definitely. So far we don't have any coffee producer that we work with being reported as a COVID positive. So
That's great.
That's a lot to say.
But you are seeing that there is COVID cases within the coffee community, you told me.
Yes, but mostly in the big towns. The villages haven't been hit yet.
Let's hope that doesn't change.
Yes.
Because in order for it to change, so they would have to kind of get it from one of the bigger towns, correct?
Yes, exactly.
And so is it correct that things are being contained? So you're not allowed to leave the villages, as you said. You're not allowed to leave the municipality. So as long as they can keep that isolation happening, you expect that there isn't going to be any kind of a surge in incidences.
Yes. But that brings a problem for producers.
Please tell me.
And the problem is that when the coffee is ready, how do they deliver to the purchasing
That was
station?
going to be, logistics was going to be my next kind of train of thinking. If the isolation exists, where does the logistics with regards to, trucks taking coffee to be processed and milled and then to get it on the ships, how does that happen?
Well, so in Colombia, producers have a coffee producer ID.
Okay.
So they can move down to the town to deliver the coffee. But honestly, most of them are not coming down because they are afraid of bringing COVID.
Say that again. So they're afraid, the producers are afraid of transporting their coffee because they're concerned that if they go to the bigger towns, they may contract COVID and take it back to their local community.
Yes.
Okay.
So what they are doing is that there are these pickups or trucks, it's more like pickups, that go through the villages, usually deliver or bring in. So they will pay the person, it's one driver, to take the coffee, bring it down to the purchasing station. So we will take all the notes, separate, and give the producer, send the producer the receiving
the receipt
of the coffee.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's how most of producers are doing.
So there's a transport person that's designated.
Yeah.
Just one person for the whole region?
They will,
They'll
yeah.
designate
For
one
the smaller
person.
villages, yes.
Yeah. And that
Yeah.
person has been designated the person that they are going to put in harm's way.
Well, this is the service that
Okay.
someone will provide. Usually, we don't really have good roads, so that's why we have pickups to the farm.
Right.
Usually, there are like these transporting companies
Mhm.
that have these pickups, so you will pay them to move your coffee, so you don't have to go to the town.
And is this a new service just for COVID?
No, it increased after COVID.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm suspecting this is a new expense.
Yes.
Is it a big expense?
It can be depending on the size of your load. Yes.
Wow.
Because it's gas and it's someone to put down the coffee.
And I suspect there's like danger money. This is a premium service that most people don't want to do right now because they put themselves in harm's way. So are they getting an extra amount of money for traveling around the country during COVID?
Yes. For example, truck drivers for the big trucks with coffee.
Right.
But inside of the town, it doesn't. It's not happening because it was a service that was already there. It is just now being very used by the community.
When it comes to the size of the farms, what's the split in Colombia? Are we looking at mostly bigger producers? Are we looking at mostly smaller producers?
So the average size of a farm in Colombia is 3 hectares.
Mm-hmm.
You do have bigger producers, but those are located in the coffee triangle, which is Quindío, Risaralda, Caldas, and Antioquia.
Mm-hmm.
The bigger producers are there. Then if you move southern, Cauca has like the average size of a farm in Cauca, which was an indigenous community, and there is still an indigenous group there. It's 1.5 hectares.
Okay.
Then in southern Huila, you see 4 hectares, and around that 3, 4, which is great. In Tolima, in Planadas, Bilbao, Rio Blanco, like all over Tolima, you find a bigger farm because the land is a bit cheaper there because of the past conflict and the very difficult access.
I'm suspecting we're moving into the territory of drug lords and that kind of thing. Is that what the insinuation was there?
Yes. So Planadas and, Tolima was where FARC was born,
Okay.
basically, and when it was active. So road access is not really good, and because of that past, land was cheaper.
Okay.
So we have been seeing producers grow a lot, which is really, really nice, especially producers that we have really there. They have passed from 5 hectares to 7, then to 10, and then you find producers that have 16 hectares, and they have grown throughout time, which is so amazing.
That's wonderful. Yeah. Are you seeing that they're nervous right now about what's happening with regards to COVID, or are people just staying safe within their own communities about the economics of what's happening?
People is really afraid. So they're trying to stay safe and out of what's happening, but still there is uncertainty because maybe the prices will continue going down. Or what will happen? Will I have someone to buy my coffee? Because everyone is in lockdown, like all countries, and the news are telling all over that each country is in lockdown, like everything's closed, there's no people buying, there's no people moving. And then you have also seasonal buyers.
Mm-hmm.
So exporters that come during the harvest will select the coffees, exporters or importers traditionally, that will come during the harvest and during the peak of the harvest mostly, and buy coffee.
Right.
And then they will go away. But now they cannot come.
So that must be causing a lot of uncertainty. I was speaking with my friend Felipe from Brazil yesterday. Felipe Croce. He's a producer and a roaster, and he said a lot of the uncertainty that he's hearing from producers around the world is that the concerns are being echoed and reinforced because people are not, or producers are not receiving visitors at the moment. So the uncertainty is being amplified because of this kind of eerie silence that they're just not used to. They'd be getting ready to receive people on their farms who would be cupping and making decisions about, what they're going to purchase over the next year. And that silence is causing more uncertainty. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, also. So there uncertainty depending on the approach on how the coffee is sold. So you have producers that have that they know their coffee will be purchased, but they are still waiting for the roaster to come and visit. How's everything? Tell them how's the business going, if people is liking their coffee and things like that. And they worry about the relationship, because if there is not this like personal connection, the personal touch, maybe the relationship can be damaged. And then there is the other side where roasters come, cup, select the coffees, and then they will write a contract for those coffees.
Right.
And that is not happening at all.
Yeah, I can understand why. People will look back at 2020 if you're a coffee producer and remember that this is the time where nobody came to the farm. Yeah. Nobody came to taste anything. How are you getting around that? How are you finding, let me ask it this way. Are you finding that roasters are open to working around the limitations that COVID has presented you with as an exporter?
Yes. So we talk about that with the team, and it's more about reshaping the way we do relationships, the way we build and strengthen relationships. Yes, we will be able to be back in travel, but for now we have to, like, all of the reasons you used to come to Origin for, we have to do it virtually now.
So you send samples, you talk people through. Are the producers getting involved in that?
So yes, that we usually, with the relationships that are already strong, we are doing video calls and translating for producers and for roasters, so people get the opportunity to talk and to comfort each other. We're fine. Yes, we're fine. We will continue buying your coffee. We are being able to pick and process the coffee. Don't worry, things like that. But yeah, there is uncertainty, and it's a change. It's not everyone. It's so easy to adapt to.
Yeah, there's so many emotions that people are trying to process right now, right? Roasters are trying to figure out how they're going to adapt to this new business model and how they can continue people purchasing coffee. And the uncertainty that comes with that then leads them to not want to have to overcommit to buying, because what happens if they, do overcommit and then they have this financial burden that they don't know if they're going to be able to fulfill. But at the same time, if they do hit that well, and they do actually land a business model that works, how do they make sure they've got enough coffee?
Yeah. And for the producer will be the same. Will I be able to pay all of the pickers that I need? will I be able to pick the coffee? Because if I don't pick the coffee falls down, and that's even worse.
Yeah, I'm hearing.
You will see.
Go ahead.
You will see the effects of a bad harvest, and we will be trying to fix them for 2 years.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm hearing that in Peru that they're leaving about 75% of the cherries on the trees.
It's really, really hard. We have been lucky, and finally coffee was accepted as first need industry.
An essential.
Yes,
Yeah.
an essential industry. So producers can pick.
In Colombia?
People cannot come in Peru.
In Peru.
People cannot come in because the thing with Peru that we were really worried about is that the government, at the beginning of this crisis, the government didn't catalog coffee as an essential industry.
Mm-hmm.
So that meant that producers could not pick their coffee.
Wow.
And buyers and exporters, cooperatives, could not buy coffee from producers. So it was a huge movement of everyone getting together and saying coffee is an essential business. It's part of our industry.
It's a huge export for Peru, right?
Yeah. So it was finally categorized as an essential product. And all of the industry created these protocols based on the ones that National Federation did, the ones that we just for producers, the ones that Peru was already placed, and a protocol was created so producers could pick their coffee, sell their coffee, and buyers could actually be able to buy the coffees.
Yeah, wow.
So we do see a lot of producers that just stop picking. But more producers we have been working with have been able to continue picking coffee, which is a relief, especially because we're working towards sustainability goals, we're working towards improving quality. So we have been very, very fortunate on that area.
I'm smiling because, rest his soul, Gilberto, when he came on the podcast a couple of months ago, he said to me, you know, Lee, this black swan, he called COVID a black swan. It's one of those swans that just shows up very, very rarely. It shows up and it goes. He said, you know, Lee, this black swan, this is going to tell people if they are coffee producers or just producers. I said to him, what do you mean by that? He says, I bleed coffee. Coffee is in my blood. It's everything. I'm not just a producer. I'm a coffee producer. And this black swan, this is going to show everybody if they're just in coffee. Sorry, if they're just a producer, or if they're a coffee producer. God rest his soul.
Yeah, definitely.
He was so determined that no matter what, 135 years their family has been in this industry, and they're going to survive COVID. No matter what happens, they're going to just make it work. And I'm sure his family are going to continue that legacy. It was the industry is getting hit so hard from so many different perspectives across the whole value chain.
Yeah. It's crazy.
And then you start to think of it from the perspective of, this is a crisis on top of a crisis. So we had the coffee price crisis, and then COVID happened. Why don't we talk about that a little bit? What are your thoughts on the collision of these two crises at the same time? How is that going to impact producers worldwide?
It is really hard because sea market prices, as a producer once said, is humane. And as my really good friend says, still colonization happening over. I do find the need to have more fixed price contracts for producers and roasters. uncertainty for both. Um, in Colombia, it's quite tricky because even though the C market is down, the differentials for Colombia are up. People is looking for their coffee. And the exchange rate
against
in
the US
Colombia
dollar.
is crazy right now.
Is
Yeah,
it up, or is it doing well with the US dollar, or is it down?
it is. Well, dollars are so expensive
Yeah,
right
so it's
now,
not doing
and
well.
all of the price is it's changing.
Right.
See a lot of producers selling to commercial exporters because there's good price.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know how long that lasts, and the ships are going to be moved.
Break
I
that down
do
for people who
see.
don't know what we're talking about. When you say, go ahead.
No, no. When I say
When you say that the shift is going to be massive, what do you mean by that?
so, sea price
Yep.
changes every day.
Do you? I haven't
There
checked
are
it today. Do you know
countries.
what it is today?
No, but we can check right
Yeah, that'd
now.
be great.
Coffee. Here it is. So when the sea market changes, it changes every day, and it affects the price on how a pound of commercial coffee
Yeah.
is sold.
And for anyone who's listening, like, it's changing constantly. The reason it's changing constantly is because people who have nothing to do with the coffee industry can access this futures market. So the C market is a futures commodity market that anybody can buy and sell contracts on. Now,
Yes.
they can do that because you never actually have to take receipt of the physical product, because you're able to sell the contract that you've
Yeah,
got.
you're trading papers.
Yeah, well, you're not even trading papers, really. You're trading virtual shit that doesn't really exist.
Yeah.
And so that invites people from outside of our industry, what we call speculators. They're people who come into that system and see that they want to gamble on the coffee exchange. And so they buy these contracts when they think they're down, and they sell them when they think the price is up, or then they know that the price is up, and they make incremental amounts on that. Now, people in the industry use that mechanism to do what we call hedging. So they use that as a way to kind of back up any losses they may make when they actually buy physical coffee.
Yeah.
But they are different from speculators who look at this as an opportunity to, like you might do on the stock market, gamble. However, the consequences on a coffee futures commodity exchange is that your influence into that market as a speculator means that you end up having real life consequences for producers.
Yes.
So that's just a bit of a background for anyone that is confused by what we mean by the C market. Sorry about that, Salome.
Yeah. No, it's perfect. So the sea market is changing. It's 99 cents today.
Wow.
Just a clarification, this is FOB.
Okay.
So it's the coffee at port.
Mm-hmm.
It's not farm gate price.
Which would be lower, right?
Yes. Way lower. So it's inhumane.
So what people, again, to extrapolate on what that means. All right. So if you imagine a coffee producer picks the cherries, that's one price point. They then have to, and this lends itself, what I'm about to explain, lends itself to the complexity of why you can't just say a coffee supply chain. Because even within one region of a country, an origin producing country, the coffee supply chain may be incredibly complex. So while you have producers that are able to pick and process and mill and follow the whole thing all the way to port and transport it to that port by, taking care of their own exporting responsibilities, you have other regions that the person who picks it passes it on to a quiote, which then passes it on to somebody who's going to process and mill that coffee, which then passes it off to an exporter. And so the coffee is exchanging hands many times. Please, Salome, correct me if I'm wrong on any of this.
No, it is different in each country.
Right.
And even between municipalities.
And so what ends up happening is that if you have the coffee exchanging hands many times, that coffee as it exchanges has a new price point. So when you sell the coffee from the person who's picking the cherry to the quiote, there's one price point. And, do we call that farm gate or don't we call that farm gate? Do we then, when that quiote then sells it to the mill, is that farm gate or is that not farm gate? And then as it gets processed, the complexity is so important for people to understand. So we have the price of producing that coffee. To add another complexity to this, we have the price of producing that coffee, and then we also have a separate price, the cost of doing business for that producer. So if we were to draw an equivalent in a cafe, the cost of goods of producing a latte versus the fixed cost of running the cafe that produces that latte. And we look at this price that is designated on the C market, that is FOB. That FOB price is free on board, which means that's the price, including everything, to get that coffee on a ship.
Yeah.
Now, if that's 99 cents.
Imagine what the producer gets.
The fraction of that, because a whole bunch of people have to get paid out of that 99 cents.
Yeah.
And I mean, when you look at that, how is a producer, if anyone is under any delusions that even 99 cents is close to what it costs a producer to produce a pound of coffee, please have more conversations with people who know what they're talking about. Like if anyone that's listening to this thinks that 99 cents is even close to enough for everybody that's involved for coffee to get on the boat,
no,
it's not even close. What does Caravela think is a more fair price than 99 cents?
So we, way more than that. Like on average, just producing a pound of coffee, the equivalent would be at least 110, 124 cents. Just
that's
producing
commercial
it.
grade.
No. Yes. Yeah.
Right. So
with a good yield.
With a good yield. So that's just the producing price. That's not including the cost of running the farm.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So
we
go ahead.
Yeah, I did a study on cost of production. So if you have tons of questions about that, you can download it.
Yeah, if you email me that, I will include a link in the show notes so that people can go and read that.
Yeah, for sure.
That would be fantastic. Sure. Yeah. So if the price is 99 cents on the C market right now for all of this, and producers are hurting big time with a lot of uncertainty to come.
Yeah.
You couldn't blame a coffee producer from turning around and saying, I think I'm going to grow macadamia nuts.
Not.
That doesn't make sense.
No. And if you do it, you don't understand anything about the coffee industry. Or you're just thinking about yourself.
Salome, honestly, a lot of people on the consuming end of our industry are very unaware of the challenges that are faced by producers. I'll cop to it. Before I had this podcast, I was unaware. And I use this podcast as a way to educate myself on all of this. It's why it's so important for me to have conversations with producers and with importers and with exporters so that we can get the information out there. But the majority of people don't understand this. It took me forever to understand the SEA market, and I still don't understand the intricacies of it very well. I understand the basics of how it works enough to make it sound like I know what I'm talking about. But I don't have to deal with contracts. I don't understand a lot of that. When, we were talking, I can't remember who it was on the podcast. You know where it was? It was in the leadership workshop that we recently did. And there's no barrier to entry for a roaster to become a roaster other than the amount of money that's required to start the roastery.
Yeah.
They don't have to understand contracts. They don't have to understand the value chain. They don't have to understand what's required to produce this agricultural product that they are turning from green to brown. That's a fundamental problem.
It is. It is a fundamental problem, yeah. And also that you need to be closer to origin to understand what is happening. Because portraying origin, it's really easy. It's like portraying a trip. Oh, I did this is how it happened. But it is very different from country to country. Not only like the structure of the country regarding coffee and the whole structure of the country, of course, but the people. I am Latina. I am from Colombia, and traveling and working throughout Latin America has been a big change.
Yeah, wow.
Because the way coffee done in Colombia, it's very different. It's done in Nicaragua or El Salvador or Guatemala or even Ecuador. It's very, very different. So even for me, it was quite challenging to understand the structure of these other countries that I don't know anything about.
Yeah.
So you have to be close to origin. You have to find a way to be close to origin. And
does that mean being at origin, or is there a way, we're forced to at the moment, find a way to be close to origin that means that we aren't in the country? How can people do that?
Well, you don't necessarily have to travel. I would say that if you are purchasing, just make sure of your partners. Because if you have partners, you have people that add value. If you're in between and you're not adding value, you shouldn't be there at all. So coming to origin is one of the things that's important. We cannot do that right now.
Yep.
But you do have partners at origin who you can ask.
And you should ask.
Questions.
You shouldn't be passive in the relationship.
No, just be careful because like each person understands. So be careful that you observe how they communicate first, and then you can ask questions. Ready to be for people to ask questions back.
Right. Are producers, from what you've witnessed, are producers interested with you as the relationship director? Are you witnessing that producers are excited to build relationships with roasters?
It's like the goal.
What's so challenging about it?
Coffee. It's not easy to find a relationship because of many factors. You have roasters that are buying blend coffee or bigger lots.
Yeah.
You have roasters that are buying some single producer lots that they change all the time. They don't want to buy from the same people. They're just looking for the next micro lot. And buying from a producer means that you not only buy, for me, and this is crucial to all of the relationships that I help structure and create, is that if you are committing to create a relationship and buy from the producer, you're not only buying micro lots. Unless what the producer produces is everything a micro lot, then do it. But if you want to create a relationship with a producer, you're not only buying micro lots.
Right.
Because a producer not only produces micro lots. He produced 85-point coffee, 6, maybe some micro lots, or you find, I love to do this, and it's, oh, you're looking for micro lots, oh, you're looking for 85-point coffee, oh, you're looking for 86-point coffee, different roasters. Oh, this producer has been really hard, and he can provide around 10 bags of 85, 2 or 3 bags of micro lots, or this or that. And then you make it more sustainable for the producer. Because you're not cherry picking that. Like on top
I was just about to say, it sounds like
unfairness of the market.
It sounds like you're trying to make this a fair exchange for both parties.
Of course. It has to be like that.
It does have to be like that. What I want to understand is why, and I haven't found anyone that's able to answer this question, so hopefully you're able to help me with this. Why hasn't it been like this before now?
Because many people.
No, please. Like, we've got to explore it. We've got to understand.
Yeah, it hasn't been like that because there wasn't a cut on sustainability, like real sustainability for the whole chain. And sustainability is environmental, social, and administrative or earning money. It has to go through all the supply chain. And that concept didn't really exist. Also, coffee was a very colonialized thing. So it was, I'm coming, I'm finding this, and this is what I want.
And I want to pay the cheapest price that I can.
Exactly. So that has been changing with the specialty coffee. But we also need to recognize, as you said, that most of the coffee shops that open up don't have idea how this structure works.
Right.
So they're looking for this, this exciting coffee, the next exciting coffee, the next exciting coffee. So origin was never that close to destination to really understand why you have to buy different coffees.
But what I'm saying is that I get contacted by tons of roasters that are saying, all right, so you're telling me that I need to have better relationships with producers. I don't know how to start those relationships. How do I do that? So the education's starting, right? People are getting the message that I want to do better by producers. I just don't know how to do it. What I'm hearing from you is that it's difficult to find those relationships, right?
Yes, it is.
You need to give me a call, girl. I'll put you in contact with many roasters. I'm not kidding. I keep hearing it. People continuously contact me saying, listen, I don't know how to start relationships with producers.
Hey, I love to.
It's there's a problem that I think we've got two different sides of the solutions to. Not just me, but there are other people.
Can you repeat that? Because I love to.
Oh, sorry, darling. There seems to be a problem that we've got two sides of a solution to. You've got producers that want to connect with roasters, and I've got roasters that want to connect with producers. So I think, like, we had hundreds of people tune into that discussion, the presentation that Jamie Isets and Christopher gave, because people want to know, how do we start relationships with producers? We want to, we're in a time of social change. People want to be more responsible capitalists here. People do not want to be active participants in colonial trade practices.
Yeah.
So in doing that, we've got to make it easy. We have to figure out a way to make it easier for them to participate, I guess, with partners in how to make that happen, how to, and part of the reason we ran that workshop was because what has happened with COVID has removed what I think was starting to become a more accepted idea of buying direct from producers. And buying direct from producers doesn't mean you call up a producer and say, I'll have 10 bags of, your best coffee, and that gets put on a plane and sent to you. It's much more complex than that. Much, much more complex than that.
Sure.
But it's about building relationships with importers who have relationships with exporters, who have relationships with producers, and perhaps not buying a huge array of different coffees throughout the year. It's about having a plan and a long-term projection of coffees that you like, producers that you want to support, and having a relationship where you support that producer and build that relationship over many years.
Yes. And people that you trust, and people that have proven that delivers.
Yeah.
Because as I said at the beginning, it's not only the business and it's not only the relationship. It's both things at the same time. I can love your coffee, I can love your concept, but you have never delivered the quality. You have never been consistent.
Right.
You have never been on time. Well, it is a business as well.
Right.
And it has to be profitable for everyone alongside the chain.
And it has to go both ways, right? Because I've heard horror stories of producers that get approached by importers and by roasters who come in and they want to buy a whole container. And the terms are agreed upon, the container makes it on the boat and the money doesn't arrive.
Yeah.
And I
it
hear
happens all the
horror
time.
stories of how it can sometimes take a couple of years before that payment ends up getting processed. And then the roaster has the audacity to turn around and say, that coffee was fantastic. We want to book another contract.
Yeah.
And people think that's okay.
No. And I have also seen the other way, where the roaster pays in advance to support. And then what happens? They never delivered the coffee. The quality was never there, but they took the money in advance.
Right.
So it comes from both sides. I always say this: if you are demanding something, you have to give something. It goes both ways.
Yep. And how do you think? I mean, I'm one of these people who thinks that there is a reckoning that's happening in our industry across the whole value chain because of COVID. Because of 2020, let's be honest, everything that seems to be falling over in 2020 is happening in 2020. And I think that the reckoning that's happening is great because it's lifting the veil of everything that's broken in our industry. And we're no longer able to avoid it. And so 2020 seems to be offering us that opportunity to say, you know how you just assumed that the coffee price crisis was going to fix itself? Well, sunshine, here's another thing that's going to press on its back and break it. So it's not going to get fixed. And you know how you just automatically assumed that the cafe model was going to be fine operating at 3% net profit? Well, sunshine, here's COVID that's going to show you that that's not going to happen. Like a lot of these things are continuing. You can look at labor costs, both for pickers and for baristas. All of these things are getting exposed right now. And 2020 is it's flicking the finger at all of it and saying, hey, so, by the way, look over here and over here because it's all broken.
Yeah.
What do you think are some of the solutions for this?
Education.
Yeah.
That's the root of everything. If you want to build something, you have to put roots, and the roots are always education.
Yeah.
You can try and build on top and on top and on top and on top. But if you don't have those roots, it will fall down. It's education to producers that will open up opportunities. The way I see education and the that I get to have inside of the company,
Mm-hmm.
I get to propose this idea. So we're going to teach about what roasters are looking for. We're going to teach producers. We had this huge thing in Colombia where an exporter partnered with an importer to bring geisha seeds, and they created this huge project for producers to plant the seeds, and they assured prices to producers. 2 years later, the prices weren't there, and they cherry pick the geishas from some producers. That's irresponsible, very irresponsible. But then we came up with this idea on, you want to have exotic varieties? Okay, it's another opportunity for you. But you keep in mind, and we created, I'm working still on this education side of the project. The trends change all the time. You want to experiment? Let's find a way to do it properly. Oh, the roaster wants you to experiment. Okay, so let's make a contract for that coffee. As the roaster suggested, an experiment, well, he will commit to the result, regardless of the quality, because it's an experiment. And as a producer, you cannot take the risk.
Are producers open to, well, no, that's not what I want to ask. Are producers shocked by your suggestion that they should hold a roaster to their commitments, given that in history, that's not the way it works? Are they shocked? Are producers shocked?
Yes, yes.
I figured they would be.
But we will never, my dead body, I will let a producer do an experiment for a roaster without certainty. Never.
Well, you say never, but that's how it's been done historically, right?
Yeah, but if it is like part of the projects that we do, one thing is the producer, because they hear that something is good and new, and I suffer.
Listen, lady, this is my big gripe with this industry. It seems that no matter where it is in the value chain, the coffee industry across the whole value chain is built on fads. So if geisha's the thing, all right, every producer needs to put geisha in the ground so that, or geisha, depending on how you want to say it, so that they make sure that they get the sales, because that's what everyone in the specialty coffee world is looking for. If, you know, the next fad, this fucking Dalgona coffee thing that everybody seems to have been doing during COVID, you know, we just need the tiny little inkling that something's a fad and the industry runs with it. But that seems to be across the whole thing.
Across all of it.
That's not how you build a sustainable industry, though.
No,
we don't have
never.
the basics right yet. We don't have the basics solid.
And all of the trends are coming from the roasters, what they are into, what's trending, and go down to producers that are taking all the risk.
Yeah, that's not how you build a sustainable supply chain.
At all. At all. So I do see producers experimenting and trying, and okay, so we're going to experiment inside of Caravela educational farm where we can mess up the coffee.
Right.
And then we will come up with we don't really do that because we have amazing people working there, thankfully. But we work there, we find out different ways, different protocols. Then the team of agronomists go to the producers that want to do the experiment, that want to change, that want to do something exciting, and we go with information. We do receive tons of experiments to COP. We COP them, we give feedback to producers. We have been training our quality team to be like more open to this different world of experiments, but we make sure to let the producer know that this is a small market and it's a very demanding one. He needs to be really good at what he knows to do, and then we will experiment and find other ways and build these other things. If a roaster wants to do an experiment, okay, we will find someone. You have to commit to the coffee. We will see how it goes, but the producer is not being alone at all. Like, I would never, never allow that to happen to any of the producers that works with us. It's just ridiculous to do it like that.
I know that you say it's ridiculous, and I know that you say you would never allow it to happen. Why has it been allowed to happen previously?
It happens. I have seen so many bad examples. So many. It happens because the producer is eager to find better prices and people to find their coffee. And it happens because roasters are eager to find and follow the new trends. It happens because there's no education or consciousness of the other one and their place inside of the chain. It happens. So if you're conscious of how much will it cost to a producer, the time, the space. Oh, I have a bad lot. Sorry, it was rejected. I'm losing money. Oh, I have to do this like honey process. Oh, I had to build rice beds, and I can only use those rice beds for honey coffees because those will damage the rest of my coffee. Oh, I need to invest in another person taking care of the drying and dissolving this beautiful granola bar.
Yeah, wow.
If you are not conscious of that, then you will ask whatever you want because you have the money and you can pay.
But why have we let it happen? I hear you. I hear that there is a total lack of empathy and regard and respect for the investment that's required by producers to try all this new stuff. Why have we let producers go down that road to do whatever roasters want?
Because roasters pay. And if it is a new business for me, why shouldn't I take it?
Okay. So essentially it's because the roasters hold the power.
Yeah. And it's an exporter. It's not a big risk for me. The risk goes to the producer. The roaster is willing to pay. I'll let him experiment. As this is an experiment.
But that's provided that they pay. They also have a way to back it. If there's not a contract, like what you're saying that you do, if there's not a contract, the exporter doesn't carry the risk. The roaster doesn't carry the risk. The producer carries all the risk.
Oh, we're so sorry. It didn't work well, but we will try next time.
So it sounds like this. It sounds like the safeguards to all of this are this new kind of insistence that you have on these contracts, where we have to hold roasters accountable to the demands and requests that they're making from producers and build in penalties into those contracts that will make them think twice about making these demands.
Yeah. And you hold roasters responsible, but you also hold producers responsible.
I think this is...
It is safe in both ways.
Well, it's also more professional from both perspectives,
Definitely.
Right? In the sense that if you as the roaster are turning around and saying, this is what I need, and the reason I need it from you is because XYZ. I've had your coffees before, they've been great, you're consistent, you've got a great name, you do great marketing, whatever the reason is. And the roaster then goes to that producer and says, I want you to try this new yeast processing method that we've decided, which seems to be the next fad, right? So for anyone who's just listening, you did miss the eye roll from Salome then, which was classic, I got to say. My eye roll was happening inside of my head. So we eye rolled together. Just hers was on her face and mine was inside my brain. But going back to what I was saying, the roaster can make the requests. They can make the demands. They're now going to be in writing. And those in a contract, the producer can make commitments that meet those demands.
Yeah.
But now we're holding both parties accountable.
Exactly.
And the referee, I guess, for all of that is you in this situation.
Yeah.
So you're helping to build that relationship and you're helping to hold both accountable through a contract that has penalties for anybody who doesn't adhere to the requirements within the contract.
Yeah. And you have to, because yes, you're building a beautiful relationship, but if you don't have the ground rules set and clear everyone, it's going to be misled. And eventually it will be damaged.
Well, that's what seems to have happened historically. The reason we're in the situation that we're currently in is because these contracts haven't been the norm of the way to do business.
Yeah. And like, yes, you have like colonizer, your I'll buy, but you also have, we are very resourceful.
Who's we?
And I have seen
when you
people,
say we, who do you mean?
We Latino coffee producers.
Okay.
We are very resourceful, and we have this thing called malicia indigena, which is basically because something bad is going to happen and you have to be over that. So you observe, you try to take advantage. And who can blame it? We have been colonized, mistreated, and so many things. So you find ways to take advantage. I have seen it a lot. So set ground rules. This is how I work. This is how I work. Are you okay with this? Are you okay with this? No, let's change, blah, blah, blah. There is at least the sense of professionalism, organization, demands, penalties. Like you have to fulfill properly, or you have to let them. How much can you fulfill? What can you do? Is the quality there? It is not. Like it means that you also need to have constant communication upon the agreement.
To me, this is true transparency and traceability.
It has to be that way. The only way.
When people talk about transparency and traceability, particularly transparency, this is the kind of transparency that we should be aiming for. I know like 10% of what I should know about the value chain, and that's more than a lot of people that aren't actually in the value chain part of where contracts are exchanged. But and there are people that could speak much better to this than me, and that's why I bring people like you on the podcast. But what I'm saying is we go on and on in this industry about transparency and traceability, and yet we have no mechanism, or we don't have a majorly accepted mechanism for requiring in writing that transparency and traceability. And it sounds like having this insistence on accountability through contracts that bring penalties with them is the way that we go about doing that.
Yes, it is. And it is also, always say this about transparency and traceability. In our industry, it has become more of a fight than a question. Because everyone thinks that it's being taken advantage of. And I understand why. I understand why. But transparency and traceability go both ways. They have to go both ways.
How is it not
You
going
cannot
both ways?
ask and demand.
Sorry, I interrupted you then. Please say that again so that people could hear it clearly.
You cannot ask and demand and demand, oh, I need this information. Oh, I need this information. What if the producer wants to know? Will you be willing to give that information? What are the questions of the producer, or what are the questions of your partner?
So, for example, if a producer says, this is a question, I'm not making a statement here. If the producer says, I'd like to know how much you're selling this coffee for, is that an example of what you mean?
Yes. That's an example. What are your margins? You're asking back, which are the margins of the importer, which are the margins of the coffee producer, how is the money distributed? The other side of the chain should also have access to those questions.
Yep. Last week, Lucy Ward, she was very excited when I told her that you were coming on the podcast this week. But Lucy said, when I asked her, like, how does all of this look if we give producers a fix for what's happening with COVID and what's happening with the coffee price crisis? Like, what's the best case scenario for producers? And Lucy said the power balance would be even between producers and roasters. That's the best case scenario for this situation. And Lucy was very clear that her objective as a green buyer is to get more fairness towards producers.
Yes.
Do you agree?
And it has to be. I agree. It has to be that way. We have been working, and that was a special project I started this year alongside like everyone on building the new transparency and traceability reports, because we have had those reports for a while, but the system and the way the information is presented, so we have to build them again. And it's a very exciting project. We are still finalizing the details, but it will tell you if it is a blend, price paid per producer, and it will translate to farm gate, and it will translate to green equivalent, because in the end you talk about green, you understand green. Yep. It will also, the traceability report will show each producer and the amount or the purchase they contributed to the lot. Mm-hmm. That was a very important project for me, because we have to come open and bring information. And some roasters send the information back to producers, or just this channel going both ways. But it should be there, and I have seen that it is presented in transparency and traceability can be presented in many ways.
Yeah, it's like the term specialty coffee, right? It's got so many definitions of what transparency actually means, what traceability actually means.
Yeah. And
in the end,
you need to have transparency and traceability as core values in your company to even dedicate time to do that. And you have to have tech. You have to have a strong system in place. Like you need to be able to track down, like, oh, this lot came on this date. This was the price. This was the yield. This is how much I paid to the producer. Then I put it blend, or then I kept it separate and I put it on this contract for this producer, and then we export it on this date. That's traceability.
Help me understand something. If we want to make such a big deal out of transparency and traceability in our industry, we have to have a good reason for doing it. And to encourage people to be transparent and to buy into the idea of traceability, we have to have a good reason for doing it. There needs to be a good enough return on investment for people to buy into that process? And you talk about the core value. It needs to be a core value of your company.
Yeah, because if it is a core value of your company, you will make the effort
Right.
to buy those coffees. You also make the effort to sell those coffees and to be connected and to invest.
Right.
If you track down the coffees, you need to invest in a system that will let you track down the coffees.
I hear you. I agree with you. What is the roaster's return on investment for making that a core value of their business? When I say that, I mean other than the social impact reports that they get to publish on their websites.
No, it comes down to, I can track down the best producer, so I want more of this coffee. Consistency. I know when I'm going to the coffees and I buy these producers, my coffee more consistent, my quality is better. This whole system is not to look good. It's to assure that your coffees will last, that you have consistency, that you have the quality, that you have the deliveries on time, that you can count on that coffee as a partner for what you do. That's your return.
So it's a QC mechanism, right?
As well. Connected.
I couldn't agree with you more. My big concern is that not enough roasters understand the importance of that enough to invest in it.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Wow.
In the end, it will do education
Right.
and the values on how you form your company.
Right. I think that, again, as we look at how COVID has affected this removing of the veil, it's presented an opportunity for people who are acting well. They're good operators in the industry. Because if you're not a good operator in the industry, your supply chain is likely falling over right now.
And I have seen that after this crisis and everything, this is something I've been talking a lot with my friends for a while now. The companies, small or big, that have more structure inside of value this transparency and traceability. And the more structure, the more business with passion.
Right.
They are surviving this crisis because they understand that coffee is a passion. I wouldn't be part of coffee if it wasn't a passion.
Mm-hmm.
But it is also a business, and it has to be sustainable. It has to be profitable. So these roasters that are more aligned, more organized inside, value this more and are more resilient.
Right.
So
go ahead. I think we lost you, Salome?
Okay.
We're starting to get some Wi-Fi issues, I think. Are you there?
Yeah. Yes, I'm
perfect.
here.
No problem. What I think I hear you saying, is that the people who see the value in having a value chain, a supply chain that they've invested in, are starting to reap the rewards when things get difficult.
Yes.
And this is a good reason to invest in relationships throughout your supply chain.
Yes. Definitely. And usually the companies that are more structured value this sustainability and transparency and traceability more. And they are more organized with
Right.
how they buy, their budgets, how they purchase coffee, what's their focus, as Jamie and Christopher explained on
Right.
the video. Like, leave this space for your budget. This is to experiment. These are your like relationships, the coffees you can count on. Those people that are more organized are more resilient. But I also found that these people that's more organized are more focused on investing, on transparency and traceability.
But these are also the operators in the industry that I'm talking about that are not going to have their back broken, or are less likely to have their back broken from 2020. I'm not calling it COVID anymore because there's too many things still. There's still 6 months left in fucking 2020. Who knows what's going to happen? Oh, geez. The people who have built these businesses that care about their supply chain, they care about their employees, they're the operators that are going to be less likely to have their backs broken as a result of COVID, because they're true business operators. They understand how to read profit and loss statements. They understand the importance excuse me, of securing a solid supply chain.
Yeah.
It's not just about, oh, let's hold hands and sing Kumbaya and make everyone feel great. It's not about that. Yes, there's an element of it that's passion, but at its core, it's just good business to have solid relationships in a supply chain, so that when things do fall over, your vein of that supply chain is still solid, both for you as a business operator and the producer as the person who is the lifeline to your business. If they're not making you coffee, if they're not producing this agricultural product, we don't have a business.
Yeah, definitely. And that's what is making me happy about all of this.
Well, you're doing great work. It seems that the reason I have these conversations is so that I can understand what people are, the ins and outs of how you're going about doing what you're doing. And it seems like what you're doing is inviting people to accountability, so that they can aspire to these new levels of being good operators.
Definitely. Yeah. That's the whole point.
Yeah. And you created this position for yourself.
With the help of my bosses.
Right. But you had the idea that this is where you wanted to take this.
Yes.
Well done, lady. I hope that doesn't sound condescending at all. It's not meant to. It's just inspirational. It's wonderful when you see people who are like, all right, I'm passionate about this. I see a problem. I want to fix it. And this is how I think I can do it.
Yeah.
Before we wrap up, because we've almost been talking for 2 hours, that went so quickly. What's one thing that you think that people could do to start shifting in a direction that allows them to be better at the way that they participate in the value chain?
Oh, that's a hard one.
There's many things, but what's one thing?
Education and good partnerships.
Yeah.
Find a way to learn, read, observe, then ask, and try to find good partners.
And by good partners, you mean exporters, importers, producers?
Or producers. If you're buying directly from a producer, what are the routes? The producer is very clear. I have these coffees. This is what I can offer to you. These are the qualities I've been working on. This is how I export my coffee.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing will be with an exporter. What's your chain? How do you work? What's the model you're using? Which are your principles? A company has a mission, a vision, principles. If you have access to that information, then you can compare with your values. Learn about that. learn about how to make a budget, how to reshape your protocol. When you learn all of that, then suddenly you can apply that into Origin. So it's a lot of self-education. And when you start learning and learning and learning more, well, you will be asking the right questions and observe.
And you'll survive
Be very
2020.
conscious. Yes.
Let's hope that we all survive 2020.
Yeah.
Thank you for all the great work that you're doing. This was such a fabulous conversation. I really appreciate you, lady.
Thank you. No, thanks for inviting me.
It's a
I'm really
pleasure.
happy to have come. Yeah.
And I hope we'll have you back soon.
Sure.
I look forward
Just
to it.
make it a call.
We'll talk soon. Take care, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Peace, love, and peanut butter.
Thank you.